If you're struggling with the LSAT, it doesn't mean that you're bad at logic, it means you're bad at reading under pressure, and you haven't learned the tricks and traps or the patterns of the LSAT yet. And I don't mean that as an insult, I mean it as a diagnosis, because if you've ever thought, I know the rules, I know necessary versus sufficient, I've done the drills, why am I still missing logical reasoning questions? That is why. The LSAT is not testing advanced logic. It's testing whether you can read dense, precise language, track exactly what's being claimed, how strong that claim is, and resist the urge to mentally improve it. That is it. And once that really clicks, your studying gets simpler, your score starts moving for reasons that actually make sense. And so today I want to explain 3 things. First, why logic-first studying quietly backfires. Second, what the LSAT is actually testing instead. And third, how to train the reading skill that separates 150s, 160s, and 170 plus scorers. So imagine that you're in the middle of a logical reasoning question. You're on, say, 13 or 14, and you're not yet exhausted, but you're feeling kind of tense. You read the stimulus once, you mostly get it, you read it again, and now you're less confident than before. And then you look at the choices. One sounds reasonable, one sounds technical, 2 of them seem irrelevant, and one feels kind of hostile. And so you shift modes. You stop trying to understand the argument and you start looking for labels. You ask yourself, is this a flaw question? Is it conditional logic? Is it necessary or sufficient? And without realizing it, you've stopped reading and you've started categorizing. And that is the trap. The core truth that most LSAT prep never says clearly is that most LSAT mistakes are not failures of logic. They are failures of comprehension. Not that you don't understand reasoning, but that you don't understand what this sentence actually said. And if you've ever reviewed a missed question and you thought to yourself, I completely misread that, that wasn't a logic error, that was a reading error. And reading errors poison everything downstream. So I'm going to get concrete here. These are the mistakes that people actually make on the LSAT. They treat a requirement like it's a guarantee, or they treat a weak claim like it's a strong claim. They assume exclusivity where none was stated. They answer what would be nice if true instead of what actually follows. And they'll miss qualifiers like some, most, often, typically, only if, or unless. Now, I want you to notice something here. These are not logic problems, they are problems of language interpretation. The mistakes are happening for you before logic even enters the picture. Now, here's where logic-first studying quietly messes people up. When you are trained to spot labels like necessary assumption, causal flaw, or formal logic, your attention shifts away from meaning and towards classification. You stop asking, what did the author actually commit to? And you start asking, what type of question is this? It sounds subtle, but it's devastating because the LSAT does not reward you for identifying the genre of the stimulus. It rewards you for tracking what was actually said, and just as importantly, what was not said. You can correctly ID the question type, but still miss the question because you misread one word. And at this point, someone always objects. They say to me, it's called logical reasoning, so it has to be logic. And it's true that it does have logic, but the logic itself actually isn't that complicated, believe it or not. So when people say to me that LSAT logic is hard, they usually mean something like this. If somebody gets shot, they die. If someone died, therefore they got shot. That doesn't follow. Or for example, to be alive, you've got to have water. Something has water, therefore it's alive. Also does not follow. And that is the level of logic the LSAT uses. This is not graduate level symbolic logic. You don't have to take a formal logic course in college to get this. If you can read carefully, you already understand most LSAT logic. But the problem is that the logic is buried inside dense language under time pressure. So if you train like it's a logic puzzle competition, you're training the wrong muscle. You've got to train translation. And translation feels productive, but it's slow, it's prone to error, and it often stalls your score. And that is where plateaus come from. People who are stuck in the 150s or low 160s usually aren't confused. They're just busy learning more rules, more frameworks, more terminology. They're memorizing things, but their errors are not conceptual. They are errors of execution. They might misread one word or slightly strengthen a claim or assume something that was not stated. At higher score levels, improvement does not come from learning more. It comes from eliminating tiny reading errors under pressure. And that's why 170 plus gains feel harder, because you are fixing discipline. Let me show you a simple example here. Suppose you have an argument saying most committee members supported the proposal. Conclusion, therefore, the proposal will pass. So a struggling student will think to themselves, okay, this is a flaw question. The majority support is not enough. Now, a strong reader notices one word immediately, the word most, and they ask one question. Does most supported guarantee that it will pass? No, that's it. It's the same logic, but they have a different reading of the argument. The difference here is not intelligence, it is restraint. So here's a mental model that helps. Learning is rules, labels, and frameworks. Execution is reading accuracy under time pressure. Now, most LSAT prep optimizes learning, and the LSAT scores execution. In other words, you don't get points for knowing what a flaw is. You get points for not misreading the argument. Now let's talk about those newer, denser logical reasoning questions, the ones that feel like logic games, where they have multiple conditional statements, there are exceptions, there's a must be true question at the end. The key insight I want to leave you with here is that they're not logically harder, they are just linguistically denser. So what breaks people on these questions is not the logic, it's the working memory. Because when your working memory overloads, your brain starts oversimplifying or filling in gaps, and that's fatal on the LSAT. Strong readers don't rush to resolve ambiguity. They let uncertainty exist until the question forces a commitment, and that is what saves them. So let's get practical here. Here are 3 concrete reading first strategies I want to give you. The first is strength calibration. Words like some, most, often, likely, must, always, only, and never are the test. When you read, I want you to tag those words. Then you ask one question. Is the conclusion stronger than the premises? If yes, the argument probably overreached. Second, you've got to understand necessary versus sufficient in plain English. So if I say, to enter the building, you've got to have an ID. That means no ID, no entry. It does not mean ID equals entry. So every time you see must, required, only if, I want you to translate it as, without this, this thing cannot happen. That one sentence prevents a huge percentage of LSAT mistakes. And third, I want you to review deeply, like a sniper. Most people review by saying, oh, I get it, I should have picked C. But that's not review. Real review means you can point to the exact word that caused the error. Ask yourself, what did I misread? What did I assume? What did I strengthen or weaken? If the answer is I wasn't careful, that's good because that's fixable. Now I know that careful reading feels slower, but misreads cost you more time than precision ever will. A single misread leads to rereading, doubt, cycling through answer choices, and panic. Precision will save you time. And diagramming is a tool to be used only in specific cases. You use it when it reduces your cognitive load, when the question is pushing past your working memory, but I want you to stop using it if it slows you down, causes you to misread, or it becomes emotional comfort, but is causing you to slow down too much, leading to mistakes. So for logical reasoning, you want to read the argument once, slowly, ID the conclusion and the evidence, tag the strength, predict the gap in the argument, and then go to the choices. Then in your review, you want to find the exact word that caused the mistake, write down one sentence about the reading error, not the label. For reading comp, you track the viewpoints, the claims, the author's opinion, not the details, and track the shifts in positions. Reading comp is not random. It's just logical reasoning with longer sentences. And if all of this sounds simple, that's good, because the LSAT isn't hard because it's sophisticated. It's hard because it gives you zero slack. Every word matters, every qualifier matters, and every assumption matters. And so the next time you catch yourself thinking, what flaw is this, or what diagram should I draw? I want you to pause and ask the only three questions that matter. What they actually say? Does that support the conclusion as written? What did my brain add that was not earned? And if you do that constantly, and you stop chasing the illusion of progress, and you start building the kind of precision that actually moves your score, you're going to win. Because on the LSAT, logic is not the fight, reading is the fight.